What if I told you that an ancient message, written in cryptic verse and carved into emerald stone, was left behind not for scholars, not for kings, but for you? A message so powerful it's said to contain the secret of the cosmos. Not metaphorically, literally. And right now, at this exact moment in your life, that message is waking up inside you. You didn't just stumble on this video, you were guided here, across time, through lifetimes, pulled by a cosmic thread you can't quite explain, but you feel it, deep in your chest, that soft electric hum that says there's something more. This is that something, the Emerald Tablet, said to be written by Hermes Trismegistus, the mysterious figure who was known in Egypt as Thoth and in Greece as Hermes, the messenger of the gods. But he wasn't just a man. He was a consciousness, a bridge between the divine and the human, between spirit and form. Some say he never died. Others believe he never really lived. But the truth is stranger than either story, because Hermes didn't leave behind a religion. He left behind a key, one so precise, so mystical, that it has survived fires, floods, and empires that no longer exist. And now, this key has found its way into your hands. It begins with 7 words. 7 words that unlock a portal between worlds. Which is below is like that which is above. Take a breath, let those words ripple through you. That which is below is like that which is above. It sounds simple, maybe even poetic. But this one line is the code behind reality itself. It means your outer world reflects your inner world. Your emotions shape your environment. Your thoughts echo across dimensions. What you call real life is just the shadow of a deeper, unseen realm. And you are the bridge between the two. Your body, your mind, your breath, all are mirrors of something much greater. The sun above you, it's not just light. It's the radiant fire of consciousness. The moon, it's the reflection of your intuition, your inner knowing. The 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, they live not just in the world but inside your psyche. You were never just human. You are an alchemist in disguise. But before you can remember that, you must understand what the tablet is really saying. You see, the Emerald Tablet isn't just a relic of the past. It's a living document, a cosmic blueprint for transformation, not of metals but of the soul. Where others saw lead to be turned into gold, Hermes saw fear to be turned into love, shadow to be transmuted into light, ego to be refined into spirit. And he wrote down how to do it in riddle, in rhythm, in sacred verse, so that only those with open hearts and seeking souls would ever understand. That's why it found you now, not before, not later, now, because you're ready to begin. The tablet says, the sun is its father, the moon its mother, the wind hath carried it in its belly, the earth is its nurse. Listen, he's not talking about a stone or a potion, he's talking about you. The sun is your clarity, your divine essence. The moon is your feeling body, your intuition. The wind is the breath that moves through you, the spirit of life, and the earth. The earth is your body, your root, your sacred ground. You are the philosopher's stone. And the work is to remember, to wake up, to burn away illusion, to dissolve what no longer serves, to separate the truth from the lie, to recombine heaven and earth inside your own soul. That spiritual alchemy. It's not a ceremony, it's not a ritual, it's a way of being, a path you walk with every breath, every choice, every moment you decide not to live on autopilot, but to tune into the rhythm of the cosmos within you. It doesn't matter where you've come from or what you believe. If you've ever looked at your life and whispered, there's got to be more than this, you've already started. Because Hermes didn't write the tablet for the comfortable, he wrote it for the seekers, the mystics, the ones who would lose themselves in order to find the all. The tablet says it rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining within itself the powers of both the above and the below. This is you. You are the divine rising from density. You are spirit incarnating into matter. You are the descent of light into flesh and the ascent of flesh back into light. And every time you remember who you are, every time you choose presence over reaction, alignment over fear, wisdom over habit, you activate the alchemy. You become the magician. You turn the mundane into the miraculous. You create as the universe creates, through intention, vibration, and divine law. That's why this teaching was hidden in plain sight for thousands of years. Because if you truly knew who you were, if you truly remembered your origin and your power, nothing could control you again, no system, no dogma, no fear. Because the emerald tablet wasn't meant to be worshipped, it was meant to be lived. And now, it's your turn. The tablet tells you that the great work, the magnum opus, is not out there in some hidden lab or under the pyramids. It's within your own consciousness. Your body is the vessel, your emotions are the elements, your thoughts are the fire that refines. Everything you've been through, every joy and heartbreak, every triumph and trauma, has been part of your sacred distillation. You're not broken, you're becoming. When Hermes says, separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the dense, gently and with great ingenuity, he's describing the sacred art of discernment. It means pulling apart the parts of yourself that were never really you, the fears inherited from society, the beliefs handed down like chains, the masks you wore to survive, the roles you played to be accepted. You were never meant to carry those into your awakening. But this isn't a harsh cutting, this isn't a battle. Hermes says to do it gently, with care, with love, because what you are unweaving is your own soul, reassembling itself. Alchemy isn't about force, it's about flow. It's not about conquering the ego, but understanding it. Like a younger sibling who's been trying to protect you all this time, but didn't know how. It's not the enemy, it's just confused, and now you get to show it a better way. The tablet doesn't just describe a process, it vibrates with it. The words themselves were designed to bypass the logical mind and speak directly to your energetic field. That's why some people read it and feel nothing, while others feel chills, emotion, a strange and ancient familiarity. If you feel that now, it's because part of you already knows this. You've known it for lifetimes. You are not just reading the tablet, you are remembering it because you helped write it. The spirit that moved through Hermes was not a single man, it was the divine spark that exists in every awakened being, and it has spoken before through sages, seers, and mystics across every age. Through Lao Tzu, through Jesus, through the voice that whispers to you at night when the world is quiet, when you dare to believe you are more than you've been told. You are the above and the below, the dream, the question, and the key. And when you begin to live from this truth, your reality starts to bend. Synchronicities appear, old wounds come up, not to torment you but to be transmuted. Relationships shift, the people around you may feel you've changed, because you have. You're no longer asleep, you're beginning to glow with what the ancients called the inner gold. The true philosopher's stone was never about turning metal into riches. That was a metaphor. The real gold is what happens when your soul crystallizes into clarity, when your heart becomes the furnace through which the divine expresses itself, when your presence alone becomes a healing vibration. Hermes knew this. That's why he wrote, "Its power is perfect if it is turned into earth." He wasn't talking about physical gold. He was talking about embodiment, bringing heaven down into the body, not escaping this world, but sanctifying it, turning your thoughts into light, turning your emotions into sacred data, turning your actions into prayers. This is what it means to walk the path of alchemy, to stop waiting for a miracle and become one, to see your body not as a limitation but as a sacred tool, to stop separating the spiritual from the physical and realize they've always been one. Spirit and matter are not enemies, they are lovers, dancing in you, creating through you. You are not here to ascend away from life, you are here to descend into it, fully, so completely, so consciously, that you transform it from the inside out. You become the flame that purifies, the breath that awakens, the water that heals, the earth that holds. This is the hidden teaching of the tablet, not something to memorize, but something to live, a frequency a remembering. That's why they tried to bury it, why it was hidden in monasteries, burned by emperors, mocked by skeptics, because a person who realizes they are the tablet made flesh cannot be controlled. They cannot be manipulated through fear. They do not chase approval or hide in dogma. They become sovereign, radiant, untouchable, and that kind of person, that kind of soul, changes everything. So if life has felt strange lately, if things have been crumbling, shifting, falling away, it's not punishment, it's the dissolving phase. The first step of alchemy, calcination, burning away the false. What follows is dissolution, where your old identity melts like wax, making room for what's next. Then separation, where truth rises and illusion fades. Then conjunction, the divine union of your higher and lower self. Then fermentation, where new life begins to stir. Then distillation, where clarity returns, and finally coagulation, the moment when the divine becomes real, tangible, embodied. All of it is happening through you, right now, not in a temple, not in a lab, but in the silence of your soul, in the breath between thoughts, in the choice to respond instead of react, to love instead of close, to trust instead of control. And when you do, the tablet becomes more than words, it becomes you. Because Hermes didn't write it to be studied, he wrote it to be activated. And you are the activation, you are the secret that's been waiting to awaken, you are the missing piece. Not because you're special in an egoic sense, but because you are willing to see, willing to listen, willing to remember what most have forgotten, that you are not a mistake, you are not small, you are the entire universe, condensed into a human form, learning to dream with your eyes open. And as you begin to live this truth, something extraordinary happens. Reality shifts, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. The Emerald Tablet was never a manual for the elite. It was left for the brave, the curious, the ones like you who feel a silent calling in their chest when the world is too loud. You've always sensed it, haven't you? That there's a deeper layer to reality. That beneath the surface of routine and responsibility, something ancient is pulsing, waiting, whispering. You didn't imagine that pull. You didn't fabricate your longing. That's the divine in you stirring, and now it's time to answer. Because this isn't about acquiring knowledge, it's about embodying wisdom. And that wisdom doesn't come from outside. It arises when you quiet your mind, listen with your soul, and begin to see through the illusion. The Emerald Tablet says, it ascends from the earth to heaven and descends again to the earth and receives the power of the things above and below. This is the cosmic rhythm, the eternal breath of the universe, and you are in the center of it. You are the inhale and the exhale. You rise into divine awareness, and then you return to the body to bring heaven down through your presence. It's a cycle, a sacred pulse, just like the tides, just like your breath. When you feel disconnected, you're not broken. You're just between cycles. When you feel lost, you're not off the path. You're deep in the alchemical process. Because the darkness isn't the opposite of light. It's the womb that gives birth to it. And when you finally embrace that, when you stop resisting what hurts and begin to see it as a teacher, the entire universe leans in and meets you halfway. That's the truth hidden in these ancient lines. They're not meant to be decoded with intellect alone. They're meant to be lived, breathed, felt in the marrow of your being. This is why the Hermetic wisdom survived, because it can't be burned, it can't be banned, it lives in the human soul, and when you're ready, like you are now, it wakes up. So what does this mean for your everyday life? It means that nothing is random. Every encounter, every challenge, every twist in your story is part of your initiation. It means that the people who trigger you are mirrors, showing you the unhealed places within. It means that your dreams are not fantasies, they are blueprints whispered by your higher self, trying to guide you home. It means your emotions are sacred, your thoughts are spells, your words carry the vibration of creation itself. You are not here to obey reality, you are here to co-create it. This is the greatest secret of all, the one hidden beneath myth and mystery, that your imagination is not fiction, it's the bridge. The same bridge Hermes walked to bring the divine into form. You've been taught to dismiss it, to be logical, to fit in. But the emerald tablet says otherwise. It says you were made in the image of the All, and that image is not static. It evolves, it shapes, it expresses. When you dare to imagine something greater, when you speak from truth, when you act in alignment with love and not fear, you literally shift timelines. You change the future. Not just for yourself, but for every being connected to your field. This is the real alchemy, the turning of base patterns into divine potential, of scarcity into expansion, of fear into sacred fire. You are not here to be small. You are here to remember that you are the vessel of divine energy in motion, not a victim of life, a conductor of it. And every breath, every step, every heartbeat is a chance to realign. Even in your silence there is power. Even in your pain there is purpose. Even in your stillness, the entire universe is moving through you. Hermes wrote, "Thus was the world created." But what world was he talking about? Not just the planets and stars. He was talking about the inner world, the landscape of thought, emotion, vibration, and belief that constructs the outer reality. You are creating worlds with every belief you reinforce, every story you tell yourself, every truth you dare to stand in. This is the divine loop, the dance of the macrocosm and the microcosm, and the moment you wake up to it, you can never unsee it again. Suddenly the patterns are everywhere. The signs, the synchronicities, the moments when time bends, the dreams that feel like memories, the words that find you exactly when you need them. It's not coincidence, it's correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. So look around you now. What is your world reflecting back to you? Not to judge it, not to shame it, but to learn from it. What beliefs are mirrored in the people you attract? What patterns are asking to be alchemized? What parts of you are still hiding because they think they're unworthy of the gold? There is nothing in you that is unworthy of love. Not one shadow, not one wound, not one forgotten dream. And when you begin to treat every part of yourself as sacred, when you stop separating your spiritual self from your human self, you become whole. That's the real secret. Not to become something new, but to remember what you've always been. The emerald tablet was left as a reminder, not as a book of rules, but as a mirror. And now that you're standing before it, the reflection is clear. You are the tablet. You are the teaching. You are the transmission. Everything you've been searching for is inside you. And you're beginning to realize you were never asleep, just dreaming. But now you're waking up, and the dream is becoming lucid. This life, this body, this moment, it's not the end of the road. It's the beginning of the work, the great work. The sacred art of being fully human and fully divine at the same time. You don't need permission, you don't need a certificate, you don't need anyone's validation. The only thing you need is the willingness to show up differently, to walk through your life as if it were holy, because it is. And once you begin, the universe responds, not with fireworks, but with subtle shifts, new people, new insights, a peace that grows without explanation, a fire in your belly that doesn't burn out, a knowing that anchors you when everything else is uncertain. That's how the alchemy begins, not in the heavens, but right here, in you. And when it begins, you'll notice the quiet things first. The thoughts that once ruled you start to soften. The tension you used to carry in your shoulders begins to dissolve. The way you speak to yourself becomes gentler. And without even trying, you begin to glow. Not in some dramatic, mystical way, but in a real, grounded way. People feel it when you walk into a room. They don't know what's different, but they feel safer, seen, remembered. Because your presence itself becomes a mirror, reminding them of their own forgotten light. This is the real magic Hermes was pointing to. Not illusion, not control, but resonance. When you're aligned with truth, your frequency changes, and when your frequency changes, your entire reality reorganizes to match it. You start attracting different people, different opportunities, different versions of life. It's not luck, it's law. The law of correspondence, the law of vibration, the law of cause and effect. These aren't just words, they're blueprints. And when you live in harmony with them, life stops feeling like resistance and begins to feel like rhythm. You become aware of timing in a way you couldn't before, not the ticking of the clock, but the deeper timing, divine timing. You start to trust that what's meant for you won't pass you by, and what isn't aligned will fall away without your force. You begin to understand that endings aren't punishments, they're preparations. That what leaves is making space for something that matches who you're becoming. And that grief too is part of the alchemy, because even pain, when faced with love, becomes gold. The alchemists called it solve et coagula, to dissolve and to bind. First the breaking down, then the rebuilding. You've already done so much of the dissolving, all the times you felt lost, the seasons of confusion, the dark nights where you questioned everything. Those weren't setbacks, they were initiations, proof that the fire had already begun, and now you're being gathered again, brought back together in a way that's more whole, more real, more true than ever before. This is what spiritual transformation actually looks like. Not escaping life, but meeting it more deeply, feeling everything, honoring everything, and knowing that every emotion, even the hard ones, are part of the process. You don't need to bypass them. You don't need to fix them. You only need to witness them. Let them teach you. Let them rise and fall like the breath. Because your soul doesn't want perfection, it wants presence. It wants the realness of your experience, not the performance of being enlightened. And that's why the Emerald Tablet speaks in riddles. Because if it had been too obvious, it would have been twisted, commercialized, turned into something to sell. But it wasn't meant for that. It was meant for those who feel the deeper rhythm, the ones who don't need convincing, just remembering. And if you're still here, still listening, then it means something inside you already knows this. Knows that you came to Earth not just to survive, but to evolve. Not just to build a life, but to embody a truth so powerful, it transforms everyone who encounters it. You came here with amnesia, so you could have the joy of remembering. You came here to fall so you could learn how to rise, to feel separate so you could remember unity, to lose yourself so you could find something deeper than identity, something eternal. And now that eternal part of you is waking up. You can feel it, can't you? The part of you that isn't afraid anymore, the part that knows there is no going back, only going forward. The illusions are falling away, the masks are dissolving. The stories that once defined you are being rewritten, not because you're trying to fix yourself, but because you're realizing you were never broken to begin with. You were only forgetting, and now you're remembering what it means to be divine in human form. Not in some fantasy way, but in a deeply embodied way, in the way you love, the way you speak, the way you breathe, the way you treat yourself in your quietest moments. That's the real measure of transformation, not how perfect your life looks, but how true you feel inside your own skin. And when the inside becomes aligned, the outside follows. That's the alchemy. It's not overnight. It's not a straight line. It's not a destination. It's a rhythm, an unfolding, a sacred dance with the universe, where you learn to lead and follow at the same time. And the more you relax into that dance, the more life becomes fluid. Unexpected blessings arrive. Peace returns. You stop chasing and start attracting. Because you're not operating from fear, you're not asking the universe to save you. You're remembering that you are the universe, expressing itself as a human, learning, creating, evolving. You stop trying to manifest from lack and start manifesting from truth. Not, I want this so I can feel worthy, but I already am, and from that knowing I create. And what you create from that space will always reflect the gold within you. That's what Hermes meant when he said its force is entire if it be converted into earth. He wasn't speaking about bringing heaven down into dirt. He was talking about you, about taking the divine spark that lives within and grounding it into every choice, every moment, every cell of your being, making the divine real. That's what changes the world. Not louder voices, not more noise, but more people who walk through the world as living temples, soft-spoken flames of remembrance, quiet revolutionaries of love, people like you. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to be followed. You only need to be lit from within. Because light doesn't ask for attention, it just shines. And in a world that's forgotten its source, someone who simply remembers who they are is more powerful than 1,000 who don't. So remember the tabletism separate from you. It's the geometry of your soul. It's the echo of your origin. It's the whisper that calls you in the night when everything else feels hollow. It's not just written in stone, it's written in your bones. It's humming in your heartbeat. It's woven into your breath. And now, as you awaken, it awakens too. Because it's been waiting for you. You might wonder why this message didn't reach you sooner, why it took this long to feel the pull, the awakening, the remembering. But the truth is, it couldn't have come earlier, not because you weren't worthy, but because you were still forming the vessel. The gold needs a crucible. Consciousness needs contrast. The divine needed you to experience life, with all its texture and tension, before you could receive this wisdom in a way that would truly take root. Because this isn't just information, it's initiation. You've passed through fire, through silence, through the ache of feeling different, through the yearning for something more while pretending everything was fine. And still, something in you never gave up. That quiet ember never went out. That's what makes you different, not louder, just deeper, not faster, just more intentional. You're not seeking for answers to escape life. You're seeking so you can finally live it fully, and live it as the being you truly are. This isn't a fantasy. This isn't about pretending to be light while ignoring the shadow. This is about wholeness. The emerald tablet is not a doctrine of denial. It doesn't ask you to float above your problems or suppress your wounds. It teaches you to transmute them, to meet the shadow with eyes wide open and turn it into wisdom. You're not here to be untouched by life. You're here to be transformed by it. You're here to take the raw material of your humanity and shape it into something radiant, something honest, something real. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you're performing alchemy. Every time you catch an old belief rising and you gently question it instead of obeying it, you're transmuting. When you respond with presence instead of fear, you're shifting the frequency of the entire planet. It may not look dramatic from the outside, but on the energetic level, it's everything. The smallest internal shift sends ripples through your reality. What changes within you changes the field around you. This is how you remember your role as a creator. Not in theory, but in practice. And the more you embody that role, the more life begins to speak back to you. It sends you signs, dreams, moments of déjà vu, quiet confirmations. You think of someone and they call. You wonder something and the answer arrives. These aren't coincidences. These are reminders. You're not alone. You're not making this up. The divine is responding. It always has been. But now, you're finally tuned in to hear it. And what you'll start to see is that the divine doesn't always speak through thunder or visions or dramatic revelations. More often it speaks through stillness, through subtlety, through the feeling you get when you walk into a room and something just clicks, through the way a line from a book feels like it was written just for you, through the shiver you feel when someone says something that resonates so deeply you can't explain why. That's what it feels like when the tablet awakens, not loud, but undeniable, like an ancient bell ringing inside you, vibrating in the space between words. And when it rings, it clears away the dust of who you thought you had to be. It realigns your compass. It draws you back to center, not by force, but by frequency. You're no longer chasing a destination. You're radiating direction. You're no longer begging the universe for scraps. You're walking like you belong here. Because you do. You always have. That's the illusion the world tried to sell you. That you had to earn your worth. That you had to prove your value. that you had to climb some invisible ladder to be enough. But Hermes was trying to tell you something very different, that the divine doesn't ask you to become anything. It only asks you to remember what you already are, and once you remember, everything changes. You begin to speak differently, not to impress, but to bless. You begin to move differently, not to be seen, but to be present. You begin to dream differently, not to escape this world, but to remake it with grace. You begin to feel your life from the inside out, not as something that's happening to you, but as something rising through you. And, in that remembering, something miraculous begins to unfold. You stop waiting for signs and you realize you are the sign. You stop searching for sacred ground and start walking like everywhere you step is sacred. You stop asking if you're ready and start realizing that readiness was never the point. Willingness is. You were never meant to have all the answers. You were only meant to be available to truth as it unfolds through you, to be a vessel, not a master of it all, but a servant of the light that's waking up in you. And that light, it's not soft and sweet and palatable all the time. Sometimes it disrupts. Sometimes it burns away everything you once depended on. Sometimes it calls you into discomfort so you can finally grow beyond the cage. And yet, somehow you know it's love. Fierce love, pure love, real love, the kind that sees through your walls, that melts the armor, that calls you not to shrink but to rise. That's the love Hermes encoded in the tablet. That's the frequency that pulses through those lines. It's not a love that flatters you. It's a love that awakens you, that reminds you why you came. You didn't come to fit in. You came to illuminate. You didn't come to repeat patterns. You came to break them. You didn't come to play small. You came to remember your vastness. And the moment you own that, you don't need to say a word. Your presence speaks for you. It heals, it reveals, it alchemizes. Because it's not about having the perfect life. It's about becoming the living expression of divine truth in the middle of imperfection. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you magnetic. That's what makes you free. So let the words of the tablet echo through you now, not as ancient mystery, but as present-day truth, because they weren't written for scholars. They were written for you, not to study, but to embody. And as you do, the world begins to change, not because the world itself has shifted, but because you have, and through you, everything else follows. You've probably felt it already. Something is shifting, not just within you, but all around you. The way you used to move through the world no longer fits. The conversations you used to tolerate now feel heavy. The distractions that once entertained you now feel empty. That's not you falling apart. That's the old frequency breaking down. That's your soul upgrading its signal. That's the divine intelligence within you making room for the next version of your life. And that version doesn't come from striving, it comes from surrender. From finally letting go of who you were trained to be so you can step into who you were born to be. And as that happens, the words of the Emerald Tablet begin to feel less like philosophy and more like a memory. Not something you're learning, but something you're remembering. Like hearing a song you once loved in another lifetime. Like a language your heart speaks fluently, even if your mind can't explain how. Because the truth is, this wisdom is not new to you. It's been encoded in your being since before you were born, carried in your soul like a seed waiting for the right season. And now that season has arrived. Everything you've gone through, every detour, every disappointment, every heartbreak, has been preparing the soil for this seed to bloom. And now the light is reaching it. The voice of Hermes is reaching it. Not from outside, from inside. And once you feel that, you'll realize you don't have to force anything anymore. The divine doesn't operate through pressure, it flows through alignment. When something is meant for you, it won't require you to betray yourself to receive it. When something resonates with your truth, it doesn't exhaust you to maintain it. That's how you know you're on the path of the work, not because it's easy, but because it feels real, alive, true. That's the sign, not perfection, but resonance. And when you start to live in resonance, something beautiful happens. You stop seeking permission. You stop needing to be understood. You stop explaining your light to those who are committed to their own shadows. Not because you're above them, but because you finally remembered where your energy belongs. Not in convincing, in creating. Not in fighting, in flowing. Not in shrinking, in shining. You begin to move like someone who knows. Not everything, but enough to trust, enough to breathe, enough to stop gripping and start receiving. And in that space, the universe becomes your mirror, reflecting back not what you say you want, but what you believe you are. And that's the secret the tablet was always pointing toward. It's not about believing in some external God who controls your fate. It's about becoming responsible for your own divine power. It's about understanding that the kingdom of heaven isn't in the clouds, it's in your consciousness. And when your consciousness expands, so does your access to that kingdom. That's not metaphor, that's mechanics, and Hermes understood that. He wasn't just writing poetry, he was encoding frequency. He was offering you a technology of awakening, a way to tune your inner world so that the outer world becomes a reflection of your highest self. And when that alignment happens, what used to feel like magic starts to feel like nature. Of course that door opened. Of course that answer came. Of course that vision manifested. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are in resonance with. And when you resonate with the truth that you are divine, you begin to live as if that's true. You begin to speak as if your words create reality, because they do. You begin to walk as if the path is unfolding beneath your feet, because it is. You begin to treat your life not as a problem to solve, but as a ceremony to participate in, because you remember. You're not separate from the divine, you are the divine in motion. Every emotion you feel is the sacred moving through you. Every idea you birth is a whisper from the all. Every time you look in the mirror and see more than just a body, you're seeing the tablet reflected back at you. And now that you know this, you can't go back to sleep. You can't pretend to be small when you've tasted your own vastness. You can't pretend to be broken when you've felt your own wholeness. You can't keep playing a role when your soul is begging you to be real. And that's what makes this path so sacred. Because it's not about adding more. It's about removing what's false, shedding the masks, dismantling the false stories until all that's left is light, until all that's left is you. The real you, the eternal you, the version of you that isn't afraid to be seen, that isn't afraid to love, that isn't afraid to let go of what no longer fits. You'll still have moments of doubt, moments of forgetting, moments of being pulled back into the old patterns, but now you know how to come home to yourself. You know that the truth isn't outside of you, it's waiting in the stillness, it's humming in the silence, it's encoded in your breath, waiting for your awareness to unlock it. And the more you return to that space, the more it begins to guide you. Life becomes less about pushing and more about listening, less about striving and more about allowing. You become a vessel for something timeless, and in that surrender you find a strength you didn't know you had. The kind of strength that doesn't clench, it opens. The kind of strength that doesn't defend, it embraces. The kind of strength that doesn't dominate, it harmonizes. That's the frequency of the tablet. That's the power Hermes left for you. Not in a scroll, not in a temple, but in your own remembrance. And now that you've heard it, truly heard it, it's already begun. The awakening is already unfolding. The alchemy is already in motion. Not tomorrow, now. Now becomes the doorway. Now is the laboratory of your soul. Everything you need is already here. Your breath, your body, your awareness. The world doesn't need another master of knowledge. It needs one more being who remembers how to feel, how to live with sacred intention, how to hold the fire without being burned, and how to love without armor. You are that being. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And realness is what the divine requires. You weren't sent here to escape your humanity. You were sent here to embody your divinity through your humanity. Not to reject the physical world, but to bless it with your presence. Not to seek some distant heaven, but to realize that heaven begins where you choose to wake up. That's what Hermes meant when he spoke of descending and ascending, of combining the powers of above and below. You are the intersection. You are the point where spirit meets form, where idea becomes incarnation. And the more you realize that, the less you resist life and the more you transform it. Not with noise, with stillness, not with control, with trust, not with force, with frequency. You've probably noticed how things begin to shift the moment you honor what's true for you. The conversation opens, a weight lifts, a new path appears. That's not accidental. That's reality rearranging itself around your vibration. That's what happens when you stop chasing and start choosing, when you stop surviving and start aligning, when you stop looking for signs and realize you are the sign you've been waiting for. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove anything. Awakening isn't a race, it's a remembering. And the more you soften into that remembering, the more natural it becomes. The more you trust what you feel, the more you speak from that place inside you that has no script, no mask, no agenda, just truth. And that truth doesn't always sound like thunder. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's the choice to walk away from what no longer reflects who you are. You don't need to argue with the old world. You're here to build a new one through the frequency you carry. You're here to make choices that align with love, not fear. You're here to anchor a deeper rhythm into this reality, one decision at a time, one breath at a time. The Emerald Tablet wasn't written to decorate the past. It was written to awaken the present. It's not a relic, it's a mirror. It shows you what you already know but forgot. It reminds you that the world you perceive is made of the same material as your thoughts, your emotions, your soul. It reminds you that the cosmos is not something above you or outside you. It's in you, folding, spiraling, reflecting. You are not a separate fragment drifting in space. You are the universe looking through a human lens, learning to see itself with new eyes. That's why the line exists, as above so below, as within so without, not just as a poetic phrase, but as a map. Your inner landscape is the blueprint. When you shift there, you shift everything. That's not optimism. That's alchemical law. When you change how you see yourself, the world cannot help but respond. When you change how you speak, your words become spells. When you change how you hold your pain, even your suffering begins to dissolve into light. Because suffering is not punishment, it's compression. It's transformation waiting for breath. It's gold hidden inside the fire. And you know now how to breathe through the fire. You know how to let the heat refine you instead of destroy you. Because now you carry something stronger than fear. You carry wisdom. You carry memory. You carry the vibration of the tablet not as theory but as lived experience. You are walking alchemy. You are proof that awakening is not only possible, it's inevitable when the soul is ready. And your soul is ready, even in moments when doubt creeps in, even when the path seems uncertain, even when the noise of the world tries to pull you back into sleep. The readiness doesn't disappear. It waits. It watches. It burns quietly beneath the surface until you're willing again, until you return to yourself. And you always do, because you're not here to be lost forever. You're here to remember over and over again, until remembering becomes your natural state. And when it does, when you start living from that place, the world feels different. Time bends, space expands, gratitude arises for no reason. You stop needing to fix everything. You stop needing to explain yourself. You start seeing the sacred in the simple, the way sunlight moves across the floor, the way a breeze touches your skin, the way a stranger smiles and something in you softens. This is what it means to be awake, not to be above life, but to be in it fully, present, soft, powerful, rooted. The Emerald Tablet is a love letter to this version of you, the one who's not pretending anymore, the one who's not trying to be enlightened but simply is, the one who understands that the light isn't a destination, It's a choice to return to what's real, to what's timeless, to what's true. And every time you make that choice, you amplify your frequency, you elevate your reality. You contribute to a collective shift far greater than you could ever fully see. You become a tuning fork for others, a lighthouse in uncertain waters, not because you're trying to be one, but because you can't help but shine when you're rooted in truth. You become the bridge, just like Hermes. You become the message, just like the tablet. You become the alchemist not by learning the steps, but by becoming the flame. This is your legacy, not what you accumulate, not what you accomplish, but how deeply you remember and how courageously you embody what you remember. Because the world doesn't need more information, it needs more integration. It needs more people like you who are willing to wake up and live as the reminder, who are willing to walk through life like it's sacred, who are willing to risk being misunderstood in order to be authentic, who are willing to speak the truth even when their voice shakes, who are willing to love even after everything they've lost. That is the work, that is the way, that is the message of the emerald tablet made flesh, and you are the living proof. You are the proof that this message was never lost. It's been living in you, quiet but persistent, waiting for the day you'd pause long enough to hear it. Not with your ears, but with your being. You didn't need a classroom or a temple, you just needed a moment of stillness. A moment like this one. That's where all awakening begins. Not in noise, but in silence. Not in answers, but in deep, sacred questions. The ones you don't ask out loud, but feel pulsing through your chest. Why am I here? Who am I really? What am I meant to become? The tablet never gives you a direct answer to those questions, because it isn't here to hand you a conclusion, it's here to activate a journey, and the journey is what transforms you. You are not here to memorize someone else's map, you're here to draw your own, to walk your own path, to alchemize your own life. And when you begin to do that, you understand why the truth was hidden in symbols and riddles, not to confuse you, but to protect you. Because only those who were ready would understand, not with the mind but with the heart, not with the ego but with the soul. And you are ready, not because you have it all figured out, but because you're willing to step forward anyway, to follow the current of truth even when it leads you away from everything familiar, to leave behind the safety of who you've been for the unknown brilliance of who you're becoming. That's what real transformation asks of you. To let go before you know what's coming next, to trust the unfolding, to walk with faith not because the road is clear, but because you've remembered that you are the road. And every time you choose to trust the divine rhythm over the mental noise, you reclaim your power. Every time you listen to the subtle pull of intuition instead of the roar of doubt, you reclaim your clarity. Every time you speak truth, even when it trembles through your throat, you reclaim your voice. And when you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your reality. Because your voice is vibration, your words are spells, your frequency is what weaves the invisible into form. The world around you is not static, it's listening, it's responding, it's echoing back to you the tone of your belief, the rhythm of your thoughts, the music of your presence. That's the true magic. You don't bend the world by force, you tune it by being. By becoming a living note in harmony with the divine, not louder, not better, just true. And truth doesn't need to scream, it resonates, it fills a room without effort, it changes people without demand, and it creates without needing to control. That's the frequency Hermes encoded into every line of the tablet, the knowing that when you live from alignment, reality has no choice but to bend toward you. Because you're not fighting with the universe anymore, you're flowing with it. You've stopped treating life like a problem and started treating it like a partner. And when you do that, you move differently, you breathe differently, you speak differently, not because someone taught you how, but because you remembered how. You remembered that the sacred doesn't require ceremony, it requires sincerity. You remembered that wisdom isn't found in complexity, it's found in simplicity, in honesty, in stillness. And in that stillness everything begins to change. You stop defining yourself by the past. You stop projecting yourself into a future that hasn't arrived. You stop trying to fix the moment and instead meet it, hold it, breathe into it. And suddenly you feel more alive than ever, not because anything outside has changed, but because you have. You've shifted from seeking to seeing, from hoping to knowing, from separation to wholeness. And in that wholeness, you begin to feel connected again, to nature, to people, to the universe, but more importantly to yourself. You become the one you've been waiting for. You become the guide you kept asking to appear. You become the answer to the prayers you whispered in the dark, not because someone gave you permission, but because you gave it to yourself. And that is when the real work begins, the great work, not as something to achieve, but as something to embody, not to reach enlightenment as a destination, but to express light in every step of the journey. That's what Hermes meant when he wrote, "Thus the world was created," not just the physical world, but the inner one, the energetic one, the unseen structure of meaning, intention, and love that holds the entire dance together. You are the world being recreated through new awareness. You are the mirror of the all. You are the echo of the divine, sounding out into form moment by moment. And when you walk through life with that knowing, not arrogance, not superiority, but deep reverence, everything shifts. You begin to honor yourself not as better than others, but as a vessel for the sacred. And from that honoring you begin to honor everyone else too, not for who they pretend to be, but for the light you sense beneath their masks. You begin to see the world through the eyes of the alchemist. Not what is, but what could be. Not what someone shows you, but what's waiting to awaken in them. And you begin to speak to that part of them, to look for that part, to hold space for that part to rise. And when enough people do that, a new world is born. Not through revolution, but through resonance. Not through control, but through consciousness. That is the legacy of the tablet, not to create a religion, but to initiate a remembering, not to build temples of stone, but to awaken temples of flesh and blood. You are that temple. You are that fire. You are that encoded truth rising again in this time, because now is when it matters, not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. Because now, someone needs your presence, now. Someone will hear your words and remember something forgotten. Now, someone will meet your energy and feel safe enough to drop their armor. That is what you bring, not with effort, but with essence. That is the alchemy Hermes was pointing to all along, and you, dear soul, are now living it. You don't have to look any further. You don't have to keep searching through books, through gurus, through endless teachings, trying to find what's already alive inside you. The message was never hidden in some faraway land, or locked inside a temple only the chosen could enter. It was written into the fabric of your being, into your bones, into your breath, in the way your heart aches for something more, and the way your soul leans toward the light even when the world tries to pull you back into forgetting. Because that ache, that pull, that quiet longing you've felt your entire life, that was the signal, that was the call, that was the echo of the tablet speaking to you before you even had words to understand it. And you listened. Even when you didn't know what it meant, you listened. Even when you were surrounded by noise and pressure and fear, some part of you stayed open. Some part of you never gave up. And that's why you're here, not by chance, not by accident, but because the time has come for the code to awaken in you fully. And when it does, you'll look back at everything you've survived, not with resentment, but with reverence. Every challenge, every shadow, every closed door was part of the refinement. Every detour was a redirection. Every heartbreak was a cracking open, so more light could get in. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. The fire you walked through didn't destroy you, it forged you into clarity, into awareness, into someone who now sees through illusion and chooses love anyway. It's the gold Hermes was pointing to. Not coins, not treasure, but the kind of inner radiance that can't be bought, taught, or taken away. The kind that lives in your eyes. The kind that makes people feel safe around you without knowing why. the kind that comes from knowing who you are beyond what you've been through. And now you walk with that knowing, not needing to prove it, not needing to announce it, just carrying it, silently, powerfully, like a flame, like a pulse, like the rhythm of something ancient and eternal moving through human form. You've become a guardian of the truth, not just the truth in books or teachings, but the truth of being, the truth of wholeness, the truth that says nothing real can ever be lost, that even when it looks like something is ending, it's actually transforming, that even when it feels like something is falling apart, something deeper is falling into place. You see that now, you feel that now, and because of that, you don't panic when the ground beneath you shifts. You don't fear the unknown the way you used to. You've made peace with the mystery, and in doing so you've found your power, the real kind. The kind that doesn't rely on control or certainty. The kind that breathes in the dark and still knows the dawn is coming. This is the space Hermes lived in, not in the extremes but in the balance, the union, the sacred middle, the still point between light and shadow, between above and below. He wasn't here to escape this world, he was here to reveal its deeper layers. And now, so are you. You're not here to rise above humanity, you're here to illuminate it, to bring the divine down through your presence and let it ripple through your choices, your relationships, your silence, your joy. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to try hard to do that. You only need to be fully here. When you're present, the universe moves through you with ease. When you're aligned, even your smallest actions carry tremendous weight. A single word from a place of truth can break through years of confusion. A single moment of kindness can shift someone's entire path. A single breath, taken with awareness, can reconnect you to the all. Alchemy, it's not about doing more, it's about doing less with more awareness, more love, more presence, more intention. And when you live like that, you realize you don't need a plan for every moment. You are the plan. You don't need to know where the path ends. You are the path. You are the way Hermes left behind. Not in words alone, but in vibration, in symbol, in essence. And you are carrying that essence forward now just by being who you are. You didn't need to change to become worthy of this truth. You only needed to shed what was never you to begin with. And now that you have, you're lighter, clearer, closer to the core of things. You're no longer trying to climb some imaginary ladder to worthiness. You're grounded, rooted. You've stopped measuring your value by how much you achieve or how much you give away. You've begun to recognize your worth as something inherent, something sacred, something that no one can grant or take from you. And in that knowing, you become magnetic. Because nothing is more attractive than someone who has come home to themselves. And you've come home, to your breath, to your truth, to the quiet fire in your chest that says, yes, I remember. I remember who I am. I remember why I came. I remember that I'm not here to blend in, but to radiate, to soften, to open, to awaken, and through that awakening to help others remember too. Not by preaching, not by pushing, just by being. That's the power you carry now, and it's only just beginning. Because the tablet, it never ends. Its words spiral inward and outward. They aren't a door you walk through once. They're a frequency you live into again and again, deeper each time. You'll come back to them in moments of doubt, in moments of joy, in the quiet in-between spaces when life feels like a question waiting to be answered. And each time, the meaning will feel new, not because the words have changed, but because you have. And that's the secret Hermes knew. That transformation doesn't come from running toward some final truth. It comes from returning to the same truth as a new version of yourself, over and over again, until the seeker becomes the flame, until the words become the way, until the light becomes you. You are the light now, not the flickering kind that needs constant reassurance, but the steady glow that remains even when the winds of life pick up. You are the fire that doesn't consume but warms, the truth that doesn't demand but reveals. You've become the thing you used to seek, the calm in the storm, the clarity in the chaos, the anchor in the unknown. And it's not because everything outside of you is perfect. It's because you no longer depend on it to be. You've remembered where your center is, and it's not out there, it's in here. You've started to see the patterns clearly, the loops, the illusions, the distractions designed to keep you questioning your power. You've seen the programming, the narratives that whisper, you're not ready, you're not enough, you're too much. But now you see through them. They no longer grip you, because something deeper has taken root, something quieter but infinitely more powerful. A knowing, an unshakable truth that you are here on purpose, that you are made of stardust and intention, that you carry a spark that was never meant to stay hidden. And that spark is speaking louder now, not with noise but with presence. The more you listen, the more you realize you don't have to chase alignment. You are alignment when you're fully yourself. The you that doesn't shrink, the you that doesn't perform, the you that doesn't filter truth to be palatable. That is your power. And every time you let that version of you breathe, without apology, you step deeper into the rhythm the tablet has always spoken of, a rhythm where heaven and earth are not separate, where thought and form are reflections of each other, where you no longer just believe in the divine, you express it, not by trying to be something more, but by finally being fully what you are. And what you are is the living embodiment of alchemy. You take pain and create compassion. You take fear and find courage. You take doubt and uncover wisdom. This is not metaphor. This is real. This is what you do every time you show up in love when it would be easier to shut down. Every time you speak the truth even when your voice shakes. Every time you trust the timing of life instead of trying to control it. And now that you've seen what's possible, you can never return to the way things were. Not because you're rejecting the past, but because you've simply outgrown it. You've outgrown waiting for signs. You've outgrown shrinking to fit spaces your soul has already expanded beyond. You've outgrown pretending to be less sensitive, less intuitive, less magical, because the truth is you've never been too much. You've been exactly what this world needed, just ahead of your time. And now time has caught up with you. Now the world is ready for people like you to rise. People who don't lead with ego but with energy. People who don't build from force but from frequency. People who don't just understand the teachings but embody them. You are one of those people. And the more you remember, the more your life will begin to shimmer with synchronicity. You'll find yourself in the right place at the right time without trying. You'll meet people who speak your language without explanation. You'll begin to create without effort, heal without agenda, love without armor, not because you've learned a new skill, but because you've returned to your natural state, and your natural state is divine, it's clear. It's intuitive, it's rooted and free at the same time. It listens more than it speaks, but when it does speak, its words carry weight. You've always had access to this version of you, but now you trust it, you listen to it, you let it lead. And in doing so, you become the vessel Hermes envisioned when he wrote the tablet. Not someone who worships the words, but someone who lives them. You become the line that says, separate the subtle from the dense, gently and with great ingenuity. You do that every time you discern between what is real and what is residue. Every time you let go of what no longer serves without resentment. Every time you keep the lesson but release the story. That is the subtle being separated from the dense. That is mastery. That is the alchemy. And you carry it not as a title, but as a truth. You don't need recognition to validate it. You don't need a stage to express it. You only need breath, awareness, presence. Because wherever you go, the field changes. People feel lighter, more open, not because you're performing, but because your energy gives them permission to remember themselves. That's what you're doing now, with every step you take, with every moment you choose to respond from your center rather than your conditioning, with every time you rest instead of hustle, speak instead of suppress, forgive instead of repeat. You are restoring balance to the field. You are bringing heaven into the body. You are making the invisible visible just by being who you are. This is not small work. This is sacred work. This is the true philosopher's stone, not an object but a state of being, a consciousness that sees clearly, feels deeply, and creates with intention. You are that consciousness now. You are the union of opposites, the still point in the chaos, the whisper in the roar. And as you continue forward, you'll find yourself shedding even more layers of trying, of proving, of over-explaining, because you no longer need to convince anyone of your path. You are your own confirmation, the way you feel, the way life begins to open for you, the way peace becomes your baseline instead of a fleeting visitor. That is all the proof you need. And as that proof settles in your bones, your walk changes, not because you're performing confidence, but because you're anchored in something real. You walk like someone who knows where they come from, like someone who knows they're guided even when the map isn't clear, like someone who remembers what it means to be made of stardust and soul and sacred geometry. And in that remembering, you become a force, not of control, but of coherence, not of domination, but of devotion. You become what the world has been waiting for, someone who's no longer afraid of their own light. And now, as this transmission draws to a close, what matters most is not what you've heard, but what you feel, that sensation in your chest right now, that quiet heat, that rising breath, that subtle sense that something inside you is waking up. It isn't just emotion, it's memory. You're remembering that you came here for this, that this moment, this knowing, this message etched into energy and light was never separate from you. It's always been there, dormant maybe, waiting definitely, and now it's alive. You may never look at your life the same way again. The routine won't feel so routine. The silence won't feel so empty. The questions won't feel so heavy. Because now you know how to listen in a different way. Now you hear through the heart, not just the mind. You perceive through the lens of unity, not separation. You move with intention, not urgency. And in that shift, your entire experience begins to unfold like a sacred map. You'll still have moments where you forget, moments where the world feels too loud, too fast, too confusing, but the difference is you'll come back to yourself quicker. You'll know where home is, not in a place but in a presence, not in answers but in alignment. And from that center you'll learn to meet life with more grace, not because life got easier, but because you got deeper, and that depth will carry you. It will become the well you draw from when you're tired, the compass you use when you feel lost, the spark you follow when all else fades. That's the gift the emerald tablet was always offering. Not salvation, but sovereignty. Not escape, but embodiment. It was never a set of rules, it was an invitation. One that says, come back to yourself. Trust the divine intelligence within you. Walk like you remember that you are the bridge between heaven and earth. You've always been that. Even in your most disconnected moments, the light never left you. It just waited patiently behind your fear, behind your doubt, behind every identity you thought you had to wear. And now that those layers are falling away, the light has space to breathe again. It has space to stretch, to rise, to radiate through your words, your choices, your gaze. And that light, it's not just for you. It's for every person you touch without even realizing it. Every soul that crosses your path and feels something shift, even if they don't have language for it. Every space you enter that becomes softer, calmer, more awake, simply because you are there. That is how the tablet continues its work, not through relics, through remembrance, not through scholars, through seekers, not through stories from the past, through souls like yours who are brave enough to live the truth now, and you are brave. It takes courage to look within, to question the illusions that generations have blindly accepted, to say no to what's familiar and yes to what's true, to choose love when fear is more convenient, to slow down when the world says rush, to soften when the world says harden. But that is how the alchemy completes itself, not in a burst of light, but in a million quiet choices made from the heart. You may not always be acknowledged for it, you may not always be understood, but you will always be felt, because your energy speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Your field carries a language more ancient than words, and it's speaking now, to the world around you, to the deeper part of yourself, to the divine intelligence that breathed life into stars, into oceans, into you. And that intelligence is smiling, because you remembered that you are not just a reflection of the all. You are the all, reflected, and your very existence is the tablet, living, moving, loving, in human form. So when you doubt, return to that truth. When you struggle, breathe into that truth. When you feel alone, radiate from that truth. Because you're not here to be perfect, you're here to be whole. And wholeness includes it all. The questions, the breakthroughs, the tears, the laughter, the mess, the magic. Every bit of it is sacred. Every moment is a portal. Every breath is an offering. And now you know how to use it. You know how to see the divine in the ordinary. You know how to move through the world as a reminder that we are not broken, we are just remembering. So keep remembering. Let your life become the alchemy. Let your presence become the message. Let your love become the gold. Because Hermes never left you a tablet made of stone. He left you a mirror, and now you've seen your own reflection. What you do next is yours to choose. But whatever path you walk, know this: you are not just reading the emerald tablet, you are becoming it, and that changes everything.